All right. Good evening. It is 6:00 p.m. and I call to order the January 19th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting. Do I hear a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of considering employment recommendations for the 2020, 2021, and 2021-2022 school years?
Madam Chair, I move the board enter into executive session to consider the 2020, 2021, and 2021-2022 employment recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, and the motion carries. They're getting ugly up here. We should probably get started. We ready?
That's two, Brute.
All right. Good evening. Happy 2021. Do I hear a motion to conclude executive session and begin general session?
Madam Chair, I move that the board conclude executive session and begin general session.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Motion carries. All right. I call to order the general session of the January 19th, 2021 board meeting. We are meeting tonight in compliance with CDC recommendations. The auditorium has been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before the meeting and will be after the meeting also. District staff will also sanitize the microphone before and after staff presentations or any individual speaking during citizens' participation. All board members, employees, other individuals in attendance are encouraged to social distance and must wear a face covering at all times. I don't think I'm going to talk about the overflow seating. I think we're good. The public is encouraged to watch the meeting on our YouTube channel. After the meeting, the district will follow its previously established process by posting a video of the meeting to the district's YouTube channel, Lex One video site, and our own website. The district is in compliance with South Carolina Freedom of Information Act by notifying the media of the date, time, and place of the meeting. The district tapes the meeting for accuracy in preparing the minutes. I now call on Dr. Kyle Guyton for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was karma. Oh, that was a great Brown. All right. All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Henson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right. Board members, you have received the minutes of the December 1st and December 15th board meetings. Other than corrections that have been received and made, are there any other corrections?
I have a
Yes, ma'am.
correction. I'd just like it noted in the minutes that I asked if discussion was allowed during nominations, and I was told no.
All right. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? All right, well. All right, hearing none, the minutes will be accepted as presented. All right, moving on to employment recommendations and other action items from executive session. Do I hear a motion to approve 8 certified recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year?
Madam Chair, I move that the board accepts Dr. Little and senior leadership team's recommendations for 8 certified positions for the 2020-2021 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All right. Mr. Stacy, would you any conversation about this at this time? No?
If you don't mind, Mr. Stacy, if you'll just kind of provide an update of the kind of number of opening positions, and I guess we still have a school year to finish, right?
As I reported last time, we carried quite a few vacant positions with regards to what's budgeted in the budget for this year. But we've done some. Again, as I was saying, we have carried quite a few vacant positions throughout the year from the budgeted positions at the beginning, what was budgeted for the 2020-2021 school year. We've moved some interventionists into classrooms. We've absorbed some classes. We've just done a lot of shifting around. At semester, the last time I reported, we had 8 vacancies. If you look at your report, we had 8 recommendations, but we've had 2 resignations. So right now, we're looking at 2 vacancies for this semester that we are actively trying to fill. And that, I think that kind of gives you a synopsis. You know, we did I talked last time about K-12 Elevate and some things that we've done to fill in some of our needs because we couldn't find teachers for those positions. And so right now, we're looking at 2 vacancies that we are currently focused on looking for.
And hopefully we can get those interventionalists back to doing their normal duties.
Right. As I told my staff this morning, we're going to reset. When we do the budget for the 2021-2022 school year, we're going to reset. And we know now that we're going to need a lot of teaching positions for next year. So you're going to see, and I think you got a recommendation coming next for positions for 2021-2022. We'll put them in the pool. We are going to really, really go at it in the next week. We start virtual recruitment fairs. We had one for counselors last week. We start for different groups of teachers in the next 3 weeks. And so hopefully when you come here in February, I'm going to have a long list of recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. We have a motion to approve 8 certified recommendations. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Do I hear a motion to approve 5 certified recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year?
Madam Chair, I move the board accept the 5 certified positions for the 2021-2022 school year as recommended by Dr. Little and the senior leadership team.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
So discussion on that. Have you resignations for 2021-2022 school year? Have you received any?
We have received quite a few. We sent out letters of intent in January, and we've had at least 22 people respond that their intention is to either retire. A lot of people are coming up for retirement, so they're either retiring at the end of the year or plan to resign. So we know for a fact we have 22 positions that we're looking to fill. Couple that with the 27 we carried last year. I mean, we got our work cut out for us in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I've been impressed over the past couple of years about our recruitment strategy heading in. It seems like we've been starting it earlier. We've been moving it more to the medium, which, you know, young teachers understand, which is more of a virtual medium. And then I think the hiring fairs, I know, are difficult in this COVID environment, but I'm sure we'll persevere.
I think the pandemic has forced us to do some things that we're going to carry forward for years to come that really were good things. We probably should have already been doing virtual recruitment fairs. We save a lot of money on travel. And so I'm pretty excited about those moving forward.
Well, thank you all for all your work.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion, board? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Do I hear a motion to approve 1 administrative recommendation for the 2021-2022 school year?
Madam Chair, I move the board accept the 1 administrative position for the 2021-2022 school year as recommended by Dr. Little and the senior leadership team.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right. Any discussion? No? All right. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and the motion carries. Do I hear a motion on an employee matter related to policy GBEA, staff ethics, conflict of interest?
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, in light of the pandemic and the shortage of available teachers and the need of our students, I move that the board grant a temporary exception to our nepotism policy and affirm that the sister-in-law of an assistant principal at Lexington High School be employed to fill a long-term substitute teaching position in Spanish for the 2nd semester of the 2020-2021 school year. The superintendent believes it is in the best interest of the students to hire this individual for the position for the remainder of the semester and advises the board that she will not report to or be supervised by her brother-in-law.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Oswald. Is there any discussion?
So do you mind, again, Mr. Stacy, just sharing at a high level the reason, again, for us to make this decision?
So, I think you heard it was a Spanish teaching position, so world language is a very difficult need for us to fill. We have several Spanish positions that were budgeted for 2020, 2021, and a couple of those we have not been able to fill because we just don't have the candidates to do that. It's particularly important to try to fill a position at a high school because kids are earning high school credit for those courses. And so this particular candidate, we are going to hire her as for a position for, y'all just approved her for a position for 2021, 2022 at a middle school. But our need right at the moment is this high school position, and so I'm hoping y'all be able to offer that opportunity for less than high school students to receive Spanish. Because if they don't receive, if we don't get her, we have a couple of options. We can dissolve the classes so they wouldn't be able to get their Spanish credit, or we could try to combine them with other classes, which would put 30 to 40 students in a section, and that's way too many students in a pandemic. So that's kind of our options.
And I guess some of the online students have been coming back to go back to the hybrid model, so
Yes,
it's
sir.
put
We had
more burden.
We had quite a move from online back to the face-to-face.
All right, board, any other questions or conversation? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and the motion carries. Do we have any cards tonight? Any citizens to participate? No? All right, we will zoom right over that. Okay. Moving on to action items. Do I hear a motion to approve the second reading of policy JFABF, students in foster care?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the second reading of policy JFABF, students in foster care, as presented by the administration.
Thank you, Dr. Guyton. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right, Mr. Caldwell, will you walk us through this one?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. You'll recall last month I brought for first reading policy JFABF, which brings into policy our already standard operating procedures for working with students in foster care. And basically this model policy provides definitions, placement processes, transportation, record-keeping procedures. And as I said, it aligns with our current practices. It was pointed out, and rightly so, after the first reading that there was a process statement put where the definitions are. So you'll see that I struck through the red line to that addition and added it on the next page under placement process at the end of that first paragraph. In fact, I enhanced the language somewhat so there'd be no confusion, because that is one point that tends to trip people up. So that was the only correction that I noted and the only correction I made from first reading to second. And so we do present this to you at this time for approval.
Board, are there any questions?
I did have one, and we may have covered this last time. I just don't recall. On page 3, under transportation, the district foster care point of contacts from the 5 Lexington County school districts. That's in there, I assume, because with it being Lexington County, the child placed in foster care, they may kind of move between districts, and so
that
would
does
be the
happen
reason.
frequently. And we have an agreement with the other 4 districts to share costs. That's certainly not to say that we would only accept students of foster care from those other 4 districts. And we do have a mechanism in place to pay for if someone is, say, in Aiken County or in an adjacent, but that was written specifically because we have an agreement with those counties, or with those school districts.
With the other school district. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Do I hear a motion to approve the second reading of policy GBEBDA, criminal record checks?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the second reading of policy GBEBDA, criminal records check, as presented by administration.
Thank you, Dr. Guyton. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Is there any discussion? Mr. Caldwell, would you like to? Oh, excuse me, Mike Stacy?
It's not Mr. Caldwell, it's me.
Okay, sorry.
So this is just a new policy. It includes verbiage from our former policy GCF. It addresses background checks for out-of-state hires as well as guidelines related to background screenings.
All right. Board, are there any questions or discussion?
Now, do we go to each of those sites individually, or is there a service? I know with for example, our office, we switched over to a different service that provides a little more comprehensive view. It does cost a little more, but it was amazing how much more information they could produce.
So what we do by law, we have to do a SLED check. And so what we recognize is that if we're hiring somebody from North Carolina and they're just moving here, they're not going to have much of a record in South Carolina unless they've been here before. So what we do is we look back at where their previous places have been. And we do have a company called Azura.
Okay.
And we can run a background check through Azura, and they'll do the last 10 places that the people have lived.
Okay, and they check everything, sex offender registry, the SLED
Well,
checks.
no, we do the National Sex Offender Registry. We do that separate.
That's
But we do
done
that on
separate.
everybody.
Okay, okay,
And we run a SLED because the state law says that, but then we also do the Azura check.
gotcha. And as far as licensure is concerned, is that ever addressed for?
You mean as far as certificate?
Right, like,
Yeah, the state does that.
Okay.
And we get the certificate through them.
gotcha.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Stacy? No? Okay. All right, board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and the motion carries. All right, 9.3, do I hear a motion to approve the second reading of policy GCF and administrative rule GCFR, professional staff hiring?
I could make this motion, but I have an amendment as well. Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the second reading of policy GCF, professional staff hiring, and GCFR, administrative rule, as presented by administration, with amendments from Jada.
All right, we'll get the motion on the table first. Is there a second? The motion?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so, board, is it, any discussion? Mr. Stacy, do you want to
So
fill
basically.
us in, and then we'll,
Right, so basically, policy GCF and GCFR are replacing existing policies. It's to update the identify hiring as a function of human resources, and talks about hiring practices, et cetera. Last month, we had some discussion, and one of the things that's addressed in this policy is the posting of vacancies. And I think that's a conversation that the board has elected to have this evening. I did contact our attorney, Alan Smith, and I'll just read to you what he told me with regards to what we would do with regards to posting vacant positions, and then y'all can have your conversation. While good personnel policies provide that vacant positions generally will be posted and advertised, there can be circumstances where that is not appropriate. As a result, it is prudent to provide that while positions generally will be advertised, there can be occasions where that is not required. For example, the district may have an internal candidate who would be best for a particular position. In that case, the district should have the discretion to forego the advertising of the position and simply employ the internal candidate for the vacant position. There wouldn't be any need to advertise the position, screen and interview applicants, et cetera, if the district already knows who it intends to place in the vacant position. In fact, doing so could create liability claims by applicants who applied and did not receive the job. The district also could need to move quickly after an unexpected departure to fill a position, and posting the vacancy, et cetera, can unnecessarily slow down the process of filling an open job. The district also could have legitimate reasons to reassign a current employee into another vacant position. If so, it would not be practical to advertise that vacant job. This is a tough job market. The district wants to have the flexibility to move quickly. Requiring an absolute rule of always advertising every vacant position would limit that flexibility and could prevent the district from obtaining the best available candidate. It is our experience, this is the attorney speaking, most vacancies do get posted and advertised. However, it is prudent for district policy to allow some discretion and flexibility. And I will tell you that we do try to post every position, and we have really upped our process that we use. I think Dr. Powers alluded to this earlier. I mean, we have, we score, like I was telling you with White Knoll High School, they had 63 applicants. They scored every single resume that came in. So we have, when we post a position, we put preferred qualifications, required qualifications, and then we go through and we give points for all those preferred qualifications to try to look at the resumes and rank the candidates that have applied. Once we do that, then we go back through and interview those candidates, and then we score those interviews. We've got a hiring guide now that we use, and it's pretty detailed, and we try to do that especially for our administrative type positions. But there could be on an occasion where you have someone, as Alan said, where, you know, we kind of groomed this person for the position. We've spent a lot of time putting some, you know, effort into preparing them for the next step. And so we would want to promote from within, and the superintendent would want that flexibility. So I get it, and you know, my position would be that we post every position. It would be an exception not to post a position. And at that point, I think it would be the board's right to question, you know, why did you not post that position? And we would be able to articulate that rationale. But I do think that the policy would allow for some flexibility.
Thank you.
Mr. Stacy.
I just have I wish I had all that in writing ahead of time, but I'll try to address the couple of points that I did write down. The last thing you said was you spent a lot of time grooming someone from within, and so the superintendent may want to promote that person. Well, we just signed the ethical principles from the School Board Association that says we agree to hire the most qualified person for a position. So what you're telling me is if you post for this job and someone more qualified comes in, it would be our duty to hire that person, but you may not want to post it because you've groomed someone from within. Our role as a board is just to hire the most qualified person, and in order to get the most qualified person, we need to advertise the job. This is just how I feel. You mentioned liability claims by someone that did not get the job as a reason to not post it. Well, that could happen at any point in time. You know, I mean, you post it, they don't get it, people could sue for anything. So I'm just looking at the hiring and recruiting policies, and on GCER, which I know we're getting to in a minute, but that kind of overlaps with the professional staff hiring policy, the administrative rule there. And in that administrative rule, it says, and this is for staff recruitment, that the Chief Human Resources Officer or his or her designee will write and publish all job vacancy announcements and advertisements and post them on the district's job posting website for at least 5 calendar days. So when you're recruiting, you're already posting. So in my opinion, I mean, if you can stand behind your recommendation to the board, it should be with or without other applicants. So I make a motion to amend policy GCF to read, the Chief Human Resources Officer or his or her designee will write and publish all job vacancy announcements, advertisements, and post them on the district's job posting website for at least 5 calendar days.
All right, Ms. Garris has made a motion for an amendment. Is there a second for that motion? All right, thank you, Dr. Guyton. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the amendment, which is to add, basically, Ms. Garris, make sure I got this right, that one sentence from GCE into the policy that we're currently discussing, GCF. Is that what you were proposing?
Yes. So on professional staff hiring policy, GCF, the last paragraph, the first sentence where it says the chief human resource officer will generally advertise all job vacancies within the district when appropriate, unless otherwise determined by the superintendent or his or her designee. I would like that replaced with the administrative rule GCE, the paragraph for the last one.
Okay. All right. Board, is there any conversation about the amendment? Does everybody,
I'll just add in that Mrs. Garris makes a good point, and I don't disagree with it. I do think that the way it has been conducted up until now, that you're saving people time, frustration, and money if we have someone inside that we want to put in that position. But Ms. Garris, again, does make a valid point.
anyone else? Any other conversation?
I guess, but what we're hearing from our Chief Human Resources Officer and our Superintendent is the way the policy's written is the way they prefer. So again, I would be careful, because again, our job is governance, and again, I would defer to the Superintendent and his or her leadership team in this space.
Mr. Stacy, can you read the line from the attorney again that said the example of the best? What was that? Well, good luck, because I got like 17 papers spread. It was like the first example the attorney gave, for example. Okay. Yeah, and certainly I appreciate, our attorney providing the insight there. To me, it almost feels like a little bit of a circular argument, in that if you think you have the best, then the best is going to stand up to any other applicant. And while it is a process to go through that, to me, it probably does reveal it does shine the most light, I guess. And I don't think there's anything to be lost from that. I'll tell you, even within my business, I've run into the same issue. We've had this conversation multiple times with my HR director. It's like, look, why can't I just promote somebody? I've identified this as the person. I think they're going to be the best person for the job. And the argument has always been back to me, well, they're still going to be the best person for the job. You're just given ample opportunity for multiple applicants. And quite frankly, you may learn things about other people that you didn't know who apply. And I will say that has actually turned out to be true. I have learned that there were some people who I never really would have thought of as a leadership position who have applied, and it's been like, wow, okay, this is something to grow with. So I guess that would be my argument back to not generally, but advertising all job vacancies, is that it does. There's only upside to it. I don't really see a downside, or at least I have difficulty.
So the only downside to that might be timing. So let's say somebody walked in here in June and said, I've decided to retire, and I'm going to retire June 30th. And you already have somebody that's been put in that position that you've been working to, train. At that point, it might slow the process down. You might need that person in that role to be able to make some decisions to keep the district moving forward. So that's the only. I'm with you. I think 90% of the time, better, we would advertise a position, we would look for a replacement person, we'd go through that whole process. But there could be times during the year where you would want some flexibility and some latitude. And again, I think it comes back to if we bring somebody to you in an administrative position and for your recommendation, and you don't feel like we've done our due diligence in finding the person, then I think it's your, right at that point to say, look, I think we're not going to approve this person at this time. We want you to go through this process if that's what you feel like needs to happen.
Mr. Stacy, how many people did we hire last fiscal year or this fiscal year? Isn't it around 800 people or something?
We generally hire about 350 people a year, and all of those are not certified. Those are support staff, substitute, the whole group.
But of the job type we're talking about having to post.
As far as certified positions, I want to say we hired 223 teachers last year.
So again, off the top of your head, how many of those did we not post? And because we had an internal candidate, we were grooming for that.
I don't know that we didn't not post any positions last year.
So
Now,
it's a rare event, is where I'm going.
It's more rare now than it used to be.
But it still happens.
It happens.
And that's why I'd like a policy to cover it. And you also make a good point when you say, what if someone's retiring and you have someone groomed for that position? Well, here's an excellent idea. You put the person that you thought you wanted in that position, and you tell them you're here temporarily until we list the job, go through the interview process, and you might even find something out along the way that you thought this person was going to be wonderful, but then they don't cut it. So to me, that's an added benefit of posting every job.
See, and I think the flaw in that procedure is someone steps out of the job that they currently have into this temporary position that's contingent on them then being successful through the interview process. So I think that's a little bit of a falling off the cliff scenario for an employee that might take that contingent position. I have a question, Mr. Stacy, and I don't want to get bogged down in this, but so the policy that we're looking at, first of all, I have a question for you. The GCE and GCF, those are, in your opinion, why do we have those as separate policies?
One relates to hiring and one relates to recruiting. Isn't that right? Let me make sure I'm right.
Yes, that's the titles, but they're very similar. And I understand you wanting to.
They're similar. They are similar. And we talk about how we go about recruiting for a particular position and the kinds of things we would do to recruit for that position. The other one goes to what the processes are to actually bring them on board. I mean, these are model school board policies that we try to follow when we work forward.
And that goes to my next question. We actually already have policy GCF in our policy.
We do.
So this model policy that we are attempting with the red lines and potential amendments will supplant the current GCF?
If it's approved tonight, it'll replace the current GCF.
And I guess I'm going to ask your opinion. Does this make GCF better for you from a hiring perspective?
In our opinion, it makes it better. That's why we made the changes. And again, I took it to the attorney. The attorney reviewed it, and he feels like it makes it better. And so that's why we brought it to you.
So I mean, as the person that eats, sleeps, lives, and breathes this policy,
I hear your concerns with not posting positions. And I share those concerns. I don't want to not post a position and just arbitrarily put somebody in a position. I want to get the best person. And, but I do think that there might be an opportunity, a time when it would be in Dr. Little's or whoever the superintendent might be at the time, it would be in their best interest to be able to make some of those decisions within the confines of the policies. And so I don't want to close that door. I think what I've heard Dr. Little say to me and what our we've talked back and forth about is that we want to post our positions. We want to advertise to get the best candidate. He's charged us to improve our hiring guidelines. So now we have this guideline for hiring that we're using, which I kind of addressed early on. I mean, we are doing a lot of things to improve our practices. I just don't know that we want to shut the door totally to just not giving the superintendent some flexibility. And I think that's the position that our attorneys have. I think that's the position that a lot of school districts across the state have. And that really is the position of the School Boards Association.
Oh.
But I hear you.
Okay, all right, so we have an amendment on the table to add the sentence, "The Chief Human Resources Officer or his designee will write and publish all job vacancy announcement advertisements and post them on the district's job posting website at least 5 calendar days, for at least 5 calendar days." Add that to the GCF policy as proposed. Is that correct, Ms. Garris?
Yes, that's
All
correct.
right, so that is the amendment that is on the table.
She would remove that sentence in red in the last paragraph of GCF.
So remove the paragraph, the sentence that has the word generally in it, and replace it with the sentence that has the 5 days.
Correct.
Okay. Is everybody clear on that? All right, so the amendment is on the table. All in favor of the amendment as proposed by Ms. Garris, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
All right. All right. I believe, all in favor, please raise your hand.
So, quick question,
Yes.
because I'm just processing all of this information that we've been presented. Is there like an urgency in approving this tonight? Like, I feel like I'm thinking through questions. I don't know.
So can I just say, I don't think that would be a problem if we put this to, next board meeting. I mean, we're going to go with the practices the way you have them right now anyway.
Right.
And I appreciate the fact that y'all want to kind of think through this process.
Yeah.
I don't know that I did as good a job last time presenting what the concerns were. I think Ms. Garris and I talked, and we really have an understanding of where we're going. And so I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
If that's how y'all decide you want us to do it.
Okay, I don't know procedurally what to do when we're in the middle of a vote and somebody wants, and we table this. Ms. Hill, can you help?
Someone has to motion to table.
So I make a motion to table second reading of policy GCF professional staff hiring and GCFR administrative rule as presented by administration.
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second that. Okay.
All right. All in favor of tabling policy GCF and GCFR, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. All right.
So from my perspective, Madam Chair, I'm going to bring this same policy back to you next month, and y'all be ready to have a conversation about it. And if you want to amend it, you would do it at that time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And it would be helpful if perhaps we could have amendments. If anyone has amendments, if you could share them with Mr. Stacy so that he can include that in what is sent to us, that would be very helpful. Okay.
Right. So during first reading, I brought that up. That was one of the suggestions that I made. And Mr. Stacy and I went through all the suggestions I made, and then he changed a few things. And then there were only 2 things that he thought the board needed to have some input into before he changed it. So that was a discussion during first reading.
Okay. All right. So we are going to move from that to 9.4. I've lost my place here. Hold on just a minute. I don't have enough fingers to hold them in all the places in the notebook that I was trying to look at once. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the second reading of policy GDF and administrative rule GDFR, support staff hiring?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the second reading of policy GDF, support staff hiring, and GDFR, administrative rule as presented by administration.
Thank you, Dr. Guyton. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. All right, Mr. Stacy, if you want to.
So, policy GDF goes to support staff hiring and, support staff hiring. And the question that was brought before us before was, does the board want to give its authority to the superintendent to make support staff hiring decisions? And so I talked to Alan Smith to get our attorney's position on this. And this is what he says. It's common for school boards to delegate this authority to their superintendent. Initially, there are significant differences between certified and professional staff and classified support staff. For example, professional certified employees are highly regulated through state law and regulations, while support staff are not. Legally, the district has much more discretion in the employment, discipline, and dismissal of support staff. Support staff are at-will employees. Professional employees typically have a one-year contract, while support staff do not. There can be more frequent turnover with support staff. A classified employee is more likely to leave with short notice, and the district may need to act quickly to fill that position rather than waiting until the next board meeting. Moreover, certified employees have detailed statutory due process rights, but those legal requirements do not apply to classified personnel. For instance, state law establishes detailed procedures regarding the evaluation, discipline, and termination of certified employees, but does not do so for classified employees or support staff. Allowing the superintendent the authority to hire, discipline, and dismiss support staff gives the district the greatest flexibility to address the staffing needs. And so one example with regards to support staff hiring, so we may advertise a position like executive secretary for a school. We'll get 100+ applicants for that position. So a school might go through that process, narrow that down, the applicants down to the ones that they're going to interview. They interview, they make a selection, and it may turn out that through that process, and this is just an example, someone within their school is promoted into that executive secretary position. Now that opens up that next position. And so in order for them not to have to always go back through the process, they may choose to, but they could pull from that pool of people that they interviewed for that executive secretary position and put them in that lesser position. And I promise you, our principals ask that over and over and over again, because probably you can spend a tremendous, as much as support staff flip over, you can spend a lot of time working through that process. And so that would be one situation where they would want some flexibility with regards to that.
And they can't do that now? Is that what you're saying?
They can do that now.
Oh, they can.
But the position was, I think that the conversation last month was around, do we want to give the superintendent that authority, or do we want the school board to approve? Like when I bring our recommendations to executive session, y'all act on the certified recommendations, the administrative recommendations. I give you the support staff their support staff for your information. So we make that decision at the district level about hiring the support staff. It doesn't come to the board. And so the same thing happens on the other end with dismissal. A certified person has certain due process rights that could take them all the way to the point that they could challenge a dismissal all the way, and the board would be able to hear that. Support staff don't have those same rights. And if you think about the state of South Carolina is an at-will state. And so in general, people have their positions are at will. The law with regards to certification with teachers, there's statute that gives them more due process rights.
So your recommendation is not to change current policy? Is that-
My recommendation is to leave that flexibility with the superintendent, as is the recommendation of the School Boards Association, as is our attorneys. And I do note, I will say this, Alan Smith did tell me that there is an attorney somewhere in South Carolina that goes around and talks about, he believes the statute doesn't allow this to happen. And so, but our attorneys have not interpreted it that way. They think y'all have the right, the authority to delegate that responsibility. I hope I presented all sides.
I have a little bit of discussion about that. So back in December, Lexington Richland 5 had new board member training, and their attorney there said, and this is verbatim, some districts allow the superintendent the discretion to hire support personnel, and that's fine for boards to do that via policy. But ultimately, there's a state law that says no employee, and it doesn't confine itself to teachers, that no employee shall be employed in the district except by vote of the board. So in districts where they have given the superintendent the authority to hire support personnel, the board then ratifies that employment at a subsequent meeting. And here I have the law, it's 59-1980. And I'll just read the part because it talks about purchases as well, but it basically says no teacher or other employee shall be employed unless the memoranda of the terms of any such contract of employment shall be duly recorded in the minutes of such meeting and approved by the board. So it's in black and white in state law, and it's part of new board member training in a neighboring district. And the same state law that I just quoted, 59-1980, if you look back in that policy that we just talked about, GCF, it's actually quoted and referenced in that policy. So if the state law is saying no teacher or other employee and we're using it for one policy, well, then it should apply to other policies where we're talking about other employees.
So, Ms. Garris, did that say by contract or something? Because support staff we don't issue them contracts. And that could be the difference, I don't know. So like administrators get contracts. And we have some administrators that are not certified, but they're on an administrative pay scale, but they do get a contract. Support staff don't get contracts.
Right.
Would
but
that
it
be the
said-
difference?
No, the difference is that I just think you got some bad legal advice. It just says no teacher or other employee shall be employed unless approved by the board. And like I said, just in
But
December.
I think you did, there was a line
Yeah,
about
there
the
was,
contract.
it says,
because I-
well, I can read the whole thing, so we've got it all. So no teacher or other employee shall be employed or any purchase made except in a duly called meeting of the board, of which meeting each member has been notified in writing by the clerk of the board at least 3 days in advance thereof, unless a written waiver of such notice of meeting is signed by each member of the board, and unless such action or the memoranda of the terms of any such contract of employment or purchase shall be duly recorded in the minutes of such meeting and approved by the board. No contract shall be entered into with teachers who are under a teaching contract in South Carolina before April 15th of each year. In lieu of making a particular purchase, the board may request the purchasing and property division of the Department of Administration to make such purchase. So I guess here you've got to decide, do you like our attorney's advice, or do you like the attorney in the neighboring district who said that's fine for boards to hire via policy? But there's a state law that says no employee, and it doesn't confine itself to teachers, that no employee shall be employed in the district except by vote of the board. And that's how I read that state law as well.
All right. Board, are there any other questions for Mr. Stacy? Any other conversation?
I guess the question would be, we have what, we got 81 school districts in the state?
Yes.
How many, and I'm sure you do not know this, okay? But question,
I appreciate you
I mean, you
saying
can
that.
throw a number out if you want, but the question would be, if Lexington 5 interprets it one way, Lexington 1 interprets another, all right, that's 2. How do the other 79 fall on the issue? Because obviously state law can be ambiguous at times and can be open to interpretation.
Alan
what
Smith-
advice have we had from the South Carolina School Boards Association?
Well, the model policy, I think, now I need to look back at this.
I'm just gonna say, I don't put a lot of faith in the School Boards Association. I'd much.
Yeah,
rather-
and again, it's not for, that's the end all be all, because obviously we make changes to the model policies that are presented.
I mean, they were telling school districts not to fill FOIA requests in the onset of COVID. I mean, they eventually rescinded that. But I just wouldn't go to them for advice.
And we don't know, I mean, in answer to your question, Dr. Guy, I think that would take some research to find out how many other boards.
So on GDF, policy GDF that I just presented to you, in black, it says the superintendent employs all support staff. That is the school board model policy. So what's in black here is what's reflective of the school board model policy. What's in red is what we are adding to that policy. So the superintendent employs all support staff. That's what the School Board Association is recommending.
So that's based off their
That's
interpretation of
based
state
off their
canon.
interpretation of the law. And when I talked to Alan Smith, again, he said his firm interprets it this way. I don't know how many firms how many districts they represent across the state. But I mean, I'm thinking it's considerable, the number that would allow the superintendent to make those decisions.
Well, I mean, I just.
And I'm
like to
not
say-
really sure that I can even find that out.
Yeah, and I mean, just because the school district is doing it, doesn't mean they're doing it right.
I don't disagree with you, Ms. Garris. I'm just trying to, present it.
Madam Chair, in light of all of this, as with the other two policies that we were discussing earlier, I'd like to make a motion that we table this one as well until next month and give us all time to do our due diligence.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I have a motion to table policy GDF and GDFR. Is there a second?
I second.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Garris. All
So-
in favor of
Well, just, is there any operational urgency to approving this, Mr. Stacy?
No, sir, we're just going to continue as we've gone, and this will be a change. I mean, right now, we allow the superintendent to make those decisions.
All right, all in favor of tabling policy GDF and administrative rule GDFR, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right. All right, 9.5. Do I hear a motion to approve the second reading of policy GCE and administrative rule GCER, professional staff recruitment?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the second reading of policy GCE, professional staff recruitment, and GCE-R administrative rule as presented by administration.
Thank you, Dr. Guyton. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All right.
I think the big change here is the electronic piece. Now we're doing everything online. And so as far as recruitment and hiring, and so it really goes to making it more electronic.
All right. Board, are there any questions for Mr. Stacy about this one? All right. All in favor of approving policy GCE and administrative rule GCR as presented by administration, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Stacy.
Thank you all.
All right, moving on to item 10.0, Superintendent's Report. I will turn it over to Dr. Little.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just take, before I get into the meat of my report, I would like to just take a small point of privilege. In January of each year, we celebrate the members of our Board of Trustees as part of National School Board Recognition Month. Our school board members volunteer their service, shoulder critical responsibilities, and make sometimes difficult decisions for our district, all without pay. They focus on putting students first by keeping the future success of each one in front and center in everything they do. They set aside their differences to work together for this one goal and to answer this one question: what is best for students? They develop policies, make decisions on complex education initiatives, bear the responsibility for an annual budget, more than 27,000 students, 4,000 employees, not to mention approximately 5.5 million square feet of buildings. They make this 4-year-long commitment just because they believe it is the right thing to do for children. In fact, each board member signed the South Carolina School Board Ethical Principles you see in front of me, or the front of the board chair. I'm not exactly sure where it's at. Doing this enables them to give a visible sign of their vow to uphold effective government's principles and to pledge to improve public education in our communities. So tonight, on behalf of the students, employees, and parents of Lexington District 1, I want to thank you for your service and your efforts to empower each child to design the future. Please join me in expressing appreciation to Board Chair Anne Marie Green, Vice Chair Dr. Brent Powers, Secretary Mike Anderson, and members Jada Garris, Dr. Kyle Guyton, Kathy Henson, and Tim Oswald. Okay, thank you very much for letting me take that just a quick moment. So as part of our superintendent, or part of the superintendent's report tonight, I do want to just tell you that we continue to work with our local delegation to discuss vaccination of public school employees. And I'd like to personally tonight thank Representatives Chris Wooten and Paula Calhoun, as well as Senators Nikki Setzler and Katrina Shealy, for advocating on our behalf. They've really done a lot of work behind the scenes. And I would also like to thank Lexington Medical Center CEO Todd Augsburger for his help over the last couple of weeks as well. He's been a tremendous champion for public schools and wanted to advocate and advance public school employees as part of the work for vaccination. So I'm very thankful for him as well. I think when you look at all the work that's been done over the last 10 to 12 days, the good news is that it does appear that DHEC will allow us to vaccinate staff who want it when the time comes. We have had a logistics team led by Mr. Jeff Caldwell, and they will be prepared when the time comes. So our goal is to be ready so that we don't have to get ready. We're not sure when the time can come, but if they tell us, hey, we're going to do it on whatever date, we want to hit a button and start the plan. We don't want to have to then start planning and then delay that process even more than it's been delayed at this point. So we have a logistics team working on that. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, for helping to lead that effort. In fact, our plan really kicks off this Friday. We have a really interesting inaugural event, since appropriate wording for this week. We have Mary Beth Hill is going to be working with Amy Wood, our school nurse, as well as Dr. I believe it's Elizabeth Kelly. Jane Kelly, I was close, Elizabeth is close enough, with but Dr. Jane Kelly at DHEC, and they will be doing a fact versus fiction about the vaccine and about what they're going to try to separate those two things. We think it's important to have an informational session for our employees so that they can make the best possible decision for them and their families. And just to let you know, when the time comes, I will be eager to have my vaccine. I look forward to maybe this summer taking a trip someplace that's not included in the living room. So I'm all about the vaccination of taking the vaccine, and I'll be supporting that. But we want to make sure our employees have all the information possible. And so we actually start that plan this Friday. It is unclear at the moment when we will have the vaccine available to public school employees. Right now, the latest information that I have is that we are still in 1B, but that currently there is no prioritization of us in 1B. And you got to keep in mind that 1B, while that sounds like, well, you know, they're on 1A, 1B is coming up next. It's been expressed to me that there are 1 million people in 1B. So there's a lot of people in 1B. And so it's going to take the state at the current rates of vaccination, quite some time to work through 1B. So that's why we're advocating to prioritize public school employees. But I'm also confident that we can work something out with Lexington Medical Center as part of that partnership as well. So we have some flexibility, but we're not sure when the state is going to get to 1B and what that will look like. But again, when we get there, we're going to be ready to go and ready to step up and roll out our plan. So we are excited about that. I do also want to thank our entire team for what I consider to be a very successful virtual week that we came back on January the 4th. Across the district, I saw schools that were well prepared to approach this challenge, and they were tremendous yet again. I can tell you as a father, I was incredibly impressed by how organized and focused the entire week was. I spoke to one principal who said it was, quote, among the best virtual teaching of the year took place that week. And it seems like this is the consensus across the district. The schools and the teachers and everybody associated with this effort were absolutely amazing. And I'll tell you from a human resources perspective, I've talked to Mike Stacy every single day about kind of where we are and are we able to safely run schools. And that virtual week was absolutely critical. It did serve as an accelerator week, which is what we predicted it would do the 2 weeks after the holiday, 2 weeks after Christmas Day. We predicted it would serve as an accelerant week, and it certainly did. And so by having that virtual week, lots of our positives that came out of the break never set foot on campus. So they didn't have an impact on quarantining more students or how, across the board. So we feel, at least at the moment, we feel like we're able to move forward, and we're going to continue to monitor that data each and every day. Now, speaking of that, the next 2 weeks will certainly be very critical. Have we reached the peak of the post-holiday season? That's going to be one of the questions. And are we moving back towards pre-holiday numbers? So those are the questions we want to really pay attention to over the next couple of weeks to see if we're able to then change our instructional model. Again, our goal initially was to bring back high schoolers 4+1 at the semester break. We still, that still is our goal, is to try to bring back our high schoolers back. But again, we're going to monitor that data and see where it's leading us before we make those decisions. Finally, I'll also tell you that we are finalizing a survey that will be sent out to our families about their desire for Lula in a non-COVID world. Meaning, this year we spent a lot of time and energy and effort dealing with Lula. I see Dr. Bissell here. I know she probably has heard that firsthand about all the challenges associated with Lula. And what we continue to look at is what then will that look like next year? What are if you look at our families as our customers, what will the market bear for the future of virtual education? We do believe we can continue to offer it at a very high level. And so we're going to be surveying people about, hey, would you be interested in this if COVID were no longer in the picture? Because we want to offer that long-term viability. We're focusing, our last conversation this morning, we will be focusing on grades 6 through 12 about that. And we're going to start with our middle school and high schoolers because we find that's where most likely we're going to get lots more action associated with that. But we do want to find out really what the level of interest is before we move forward, and that will help drive us. So we will be bringing back to you some data, I believe, in February. February is going to be a big one if the conversation around the last two policies or anything, because we also have a strategic planning update and some other things like that. But we want to bring back to you some data because we want to highlight, here is what, if our customers say that that's not really a level of interest at all, then we will move on and keep moving. But if it is a high level of interest, we do want to make sure we're planning that and preparing that for our community. Again, I'll tell you, as challenging as this year has been, online learning has been an absolute godsend for some people. And they've been incredibly effective in that learning environment. Other people, not so much. So, we want to make sure we can provide an option if the interest level is really there. So that's what we're doing, but we will bring you some more information in short order.
And I do think we need to be careful. I mean, we say post-COVID, but again, that may be more than months, maybe years. And there may be other infectious phenomenon. So I think having that online model as something that we're practicing and perfecting, because it takes a while to continue to perfect that model. Is important for us strategically to continue education effectively in this district. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that is my update on just kind of where we stand and where we are. And I'd like to, we've got a couple of things that we need to do tonight. I'd like to introduce Mr. Jeff Salters, who's going to introduce a guest of ours for our procurement audit update.
Thank you, Dr. Little, members of the board. I'm going to introduce to you again this evening Matthew Hodges with Burkett and Burkett CPAs. Mary Beth, I've got the remote up here. And Matthew's going to talk to us this evening about a couple things. The finalization of our CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and then also our procurement audit, which we do every 3 years. So Matthew, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, members of the board, for your time this evening. Again, we'll cover the financial audit first. We have completed our audits, the financial and compliance audits for the district for the CAFR. We did, as I mentioned last month, need to perform some additional procedures related to an addendum to the OMB compliance supplement related to COVID-19 funding that the district received and spent in fiscal year 2020. And there were no changes to the draft CAFR that we presented last month as a result of the testing that we performed. And so you do have 3 clean opinions, as I mentioned last month. We did make one correction to note 1 per recommendation to better reflect the relationship of the district and the foundation in the process of board nominations. So our procurement examination covered the period from July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. State law does require that you audit every 3 years the district's compliance with its procurement code. We followed the South Carolina State Fiscal Accountability Authority's questionnaire. The title of the document is School District Procurement Audit Procedures. In performing our procurement audit, we performed sampling. First of all, a 2-month sample of P-card purchases for each fiscal year. We inspected 2 months. It was January and March of 2018, 2019, and 2020, and looking at a sample of those purchases. We also looked at a block sample of 200 numerical purchase orders for each fiscal year, looking for items like splitting of orders and favored vendors. We looked at 15 disposals and sales of surplus property. That included 5 from each of the 3 fiscal years, as well as a total of 73 procurement transactions. And you can see the breakdown there by year. That does cover each of the strata that's listed in the procurement code, as well as an overall population sample. Additionally, we sampled 5 procurements that relate to major construction, as well as any related change orders. And we reviewed 100% of the sole source and emergency procurement documentation from July 1, 2017 through June 30th of 2020, as well as unauthorized procurements during that same time period. We did have one finding in our examination that was related to a number of procurements that were not appropriately ratified by the CFO during fiscal year 2018 and 19. And just to provide a little bit of additional information, I want to cover the district's unauthorized procurement policy under your procurement guidelines that states that the school principal or department head will be notified in writing of any procurement that appears to be unauthorized. The unauthorized form PO10 must be completed and signed by the individual responsible for the procurement and their supervisor. The facts and circumstances portion of the form must be completed by the individual responsible for the procurement. The supervisor must complete the disciplinary actions and corrective actions of the form. Once the form is complete and signed, forward the form to the procurement department. The procurement department staff will review the form for completeness. If complete, the form will be forwarded to the chief financial officer for ratification. And once the procurement is ratified, a copy of the ratification will be forwarded to the principal or department head. So it's the kind of second to last step there of it being ratified by the CFO that was not completed. That was prior to that CFO's retirement as of June 30th of 2019. In the report I'll read the district's response to the finding, stating that the previous CFO retired on June 30th, 2019, and was unable to ratify the procurements prior to his retirement. The CFO was replaced by the Chief Operations Officer in the fiscal year 2019-20. Ratifications are current. Furthermore, the district has put a procedure in place that in the event that the Chief Operations Officer is unable to complete the ratification within 30 days of receipt of the facts and circumstances surrounding the act and corrective actions, the ratifications of the acts will be assigned to the superintendent. So this finding under that new procedure should not occur again. You've got that safeguard in place. Okay? So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Was the dollar amount of those procurements that were not signed off on the CFO consistent with previous fiscal years? The number of unauthorized procurements or unplanned procurements? Or
So we covered 3 fiscal years. We didn't perform the prior 3-year audit, so I can't answer that because we weren't involved in that prior 3-year audit. That was another firm.
But the volume or size of those procurements
It didn't jump out to us, no. It wasn't unreasonable.
This might be a question for Mr. Salters, Mr. Hodges. So what are the reasons why an unauthorized procurement might occur?
I can speak to that, and you can
Okay,
correct
Mr.
me if I'm wrong. This is actually from the district's procurement guidelines for unauthorized procurement. Some examples might be artificially dividing supplies or services to avoid the competitive procurement process, items added to a purchase order without an approved change order form, authorizing a vendor to ship or deliver supplies and services prior to receiving a properly executed and signed purchase order, signing a contract or agreement with legally binding terms and conditions without the authority to enter into a contract. So that's a few examples, and I don't know if there's more common ones you'd like to mention.
Those are the most common ones that we see, and you know, we can talk more about that, but probably one of the most common is receiving goods before a purchase order has been entered. There may be various circumstances around that occur from time to time, but that does happen.
So it's more procedural than a disallowed purchase.
Typically, it is a procedural thing. Another thing that comes up is we have discounts in place with certain, local businesses, and if a person goes to that local business and does not present the discount card, as an example, and don't receive the discount, then that's an unauthorized procurement. So it's really a procedural issue that they run into typically. It's pretty rare that you find circumstances where there's an intentional split or someone's trying to intentionally split a purchase order. I want to buy 100 widgets, and I'm going to buy 50 this week and 50 next week from the same vendor to get under the limits. Our procurement staff is very good at protecting us from those types of transactions. So folks at the schools know not to do that.
And then the principal has to write a letter saying what actions have been taken and what will be done in the future, not to let that happen.
That's correct. There's a form that the principal or the supervisor fills out and counsels with the employee that's involved in the process, and then that form is then sent up to procurement and reviewed for completeness, and then forwarded on to the CFO. And at that point, the CFO signs the document to ratify it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yes,
form.
sir. I'm sure you are.
And I guess as a percent of our budget, this dollar amount is, obviously less than 1% typically.
It's very small.
Yeah.
And you guys, I know you know this, but you receive a report each month in your, your board packet. It looks like this. It's unauthorized procurements. And so, there, as an example, in July, we had 953 purchase orders and we had 12 unauthorized. December, 639 POs and 9 unauthorized. So it's, it's a very small percentage.
Does that only apply to operational budget? Do the same codes or same oversight apply to, say, an individual school's budget?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So
All
all transactions
all
are
general
reviewed.
fund expenditures, yes. Anything governed by the procurement code.
So, Mr. Salters, you could probably best answer this. When it says the CFO retired and was unable to ratify prior to his retirement, why was that?
I can't speak to that, Ms. Garris. The signatures were not put on the forms prior to his retirement.
Okay. Let's see here. Mr. Hodges, you might can answer this. Is there a quarterly or annually reporting, some kind of report that the district must submit unauthorized procurement reports to, that PO 10 that you were talking about? Does that go to another state agency such as the Division of Procurement Services? Or does all of that stay in-house?
I'm not sure.
It all stays in-house, yeah. And we submit a report to the board each month, and as I mentioned, it shows the unauthorized procurements that's in your board packet.
Okay, what I'm trying to get at is, so that went on for a couple of years. Well, at least we know 2 years that are just part of this audit. Whose job would it be to follow up and ensure the district is in compliance?
And so typically it would be the CFO's job to do that. And so if the CFO, and in this case, if the CFO, we've put a procedure in place so that if the CFO is not doing that, now the superintendent will be made aware of that process, and the superintendent will be able to follow up. Previously, it basically landed at the CFO's desk and it stopped there. And so, to your point, there was no one informed about whether or not that was happening. And so now the process is in place that the superintendent will be made aware of it, and those documents will be ratified at the superintendent level, and then the superintendent can have a conversation with the COO or acting CFO and say, what are you doing? Why isn't this happening? So it should not happen again. And it has not been a finding previously. So just to your point, it wasn't an ongoing thing. It occurred on those 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hodges, once this audit is complete, are copies of all of this information gathered somewhere? Like, is there a big book that y'all make copies of this and hang on to it, or do y'all just?
So we provide a copy to the district provides it to the State Fiscal Accountability Authority, so they have it. I'm not sure what their retention policy is. On our end, we retain our work papers for a period of 7 years.
Okay, so just say we wanted to see, this is just on the same page. So we selected and tested change orders from contraction projects selected for testing. I think that's supposed to be construction. So you would have a copy of those, and that's what you're saying you submit to the procurement office?
Oh, no, we only submit a copy of this report
Okay, that's what I'm
to the
asking.
State Fiscal Accountability. Our work papers, we retain, it's confidential information. We retain it for 7 years.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hodges? Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, I would just like to recognize Tracy Lucas and John Stevens here, directors in our procurement office, and all the hard work that they do every day to ensure that our procurement code is followed to the letter, and training and working with our schools. We have a tremendous amount of work and effort that goes into making sure that we're following the letter of the law. And I can't tell you, those are the two finest people I know in the procurement industry, if you will, and really pleased to have them working for the district.
Thank you, Mr. Salters. Thank you all for all that you do for our district. Dr. Little?
Okay. I had another question for Mr. Hodges. He saw me raising my hand. On the second slide, you had mentioned that you made a note to better reflect the relationship of the district. I'm guessing that's with the Educational Foundation?
That's correct.
Right. So what are the details of that?
So that was included in the updated comprehensive annual financial report. You had made a mention last month that there was a correction needed to reflect the fact that it's not, the foundation board members are not nominated by the district board. So we've removed that verbiage and reflected the fact that it's 3 members of the district's board are on the foundation's board. And so there's a couple of just minor wording updates in that no disclosure.
Okay,
Ms. Garris, we'll get you a copy of that,
okay,
and all the board as well.
okay, thank you.
Okay. We now have an operations update from Mr. Jeff Salters.
I want to turn your attention to the screen. We'll have some pictures. Here we're starting at the new middle school in the Lexington area. Quite a bit of progress has been made since our December meeting. You can kind of get an idea from this picture that we have our 3 classroom wings now. We actually have second floor walls on 2 of the wings. We're almost up to roof deck here and roof deck here, so we are making great progress. This is the second floor slab pour, so they're starting to lay walls for the second floor here. You can see the administration area and the art classrooms over here. This is the media center really taking shape. Cafeteria and kitchen area really taking shape. Storage building out in the back is up and actually almost lockable. Waiting on one door to come in there, and they're already using that for some construction materials. Just a kind of a front view of the site. This will be kind of the main parent drive as you come in and loop around. There's a temporary crossing there now, and again, this is just an aerial of the entire building. Gives you an idea. We still have the gymnasium and the auditorium area to excavate and begin opening footings on, and they'll do that here soon. This is a shot of some of the underground storage detention, going back to our stormwater conversations we had prior to the break. Some of the county discussions that were going on. This is some of the work that we're doing. These pipes will ultimately end up under the practice field on the front part of the site and detain stormwater for us. Here's a look at that main crossing that has been started, and this is on the kind of the right-hand side of the site. This will be the bus and service entrance drive, and that's a look of that. You're actually looking back at Old Cherokee Road coming in. Just another shot closer up of the building. This is looking into the media center. Eventually, that's the big curtain wall glass that forms the media center there. You're standing in the courtyard area. It's really nice to build this prototype plan. Number one, they make good time on the construction, but also we have a good understanding when we're looking at pictures of what we're looking at. Makes it very easy to work through the project. Cafeteria and the main windows there in the cafeteria. Mr. Guyton, did you have a question?
No, you know, my office is pretty close there, so if they need me to run over at lunch and move some dirt around with some of those big machines, just let
Yes,
me
sir.
know. I'll be glad to help out.
Let me know when you're free.
Yeah, I kind of like playing with those gigantic earth-moving toys there.
Anytime you're free, they would love to have you over there.
Mr. Salters, one of the things I've noticed is I can tell which site it is based on whether it's clay or sand, whatever is being, the ground is so different throughout the county.
Yes, ma'am. This is very reminiscent of Beechwood and actually more reminiscent of River Bluff High School site, the soil types. And so there's a lot of work being done here to keep the job moving and keep the moisture at bay. And the location right here by the lake, it gets a ton of rain. I mean, it's interesting. You're actually looking at kind of back into the media center there, and this is the stage area. The main stairwell going up to the second floor will be here eventually. And then here's your second story, and you're looking down at the front entrance there.
With this now being the third rendition of this, have there been additional changes that have been made, just from what we've learned?
Well, the biggest change here, we took the changes from Pelion Middle School, advanced them here. The biggest change that was added here is in the cafeteria. We added about 10 feet of space in the cafeteria, and that was feedback from Beechwood. Of course, this school will be a similar size of student population as Beechwood. Pelion being a little bit smaller, we didn't push that cafeteria out at Pelion, but here we're doing that. That's probably the biggest change that we're
That's
working
interesting,
with.
because that was the exact same feedback I got at my house from my Beechwood students.
Yes, sir.
It'd be nice if that cafeteria were a little bigger, so.
Yeah, so we did bump that out a little bit here.
Yeah, well, that's good. The process is playing out well.
Yep. Again, just, some here's the cafeteria, and, it's really coming together nicely. So, we got our first stairwell in and poured. That's on the A wing, and looking out through the windows there. Moved on to Lexington Elementary. Oh, yes, sir.
So the completion date for students in those two?
Well, so realistically, we could probably hit January of 2022, which is
So a year from now,
A
12
year
months,
from
yeah.
now. But that's a pretty aggressive schedule given the road improvements that have to
Yeah.
be done. So more than likely, the whole project will come together sometime late spring. We'll move in over the summer, and August 22 is when we'll actually occupy.
We're helping fund DOT's expansion of that road to a 3-lane road, right?
That's a very polite comment. Yes,
Well,
sir. I mean, we're expanding the road.
Right, but
Yeah.
we're dependent upon DOT doing it,
We're
right?
dependent upon DOT's approval of the design. But yeah,
Right.
we're footing that bill. Yes, sir.
So the time frame on that, have we talked about that?
So we are in the process of getting approvals right now. We've done some final design submittals with DOT. And of course, we have an encroachment permit, and the general concepts are there. And now we're getting into the weeds of, this elevation here, that elevation there, this line striping here, and so forth. And so they're working through that, very quickly to help us get started. There's a lot of utility work that has to be done,
Yeah.
relocating utilities down that road.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty complicated process. And then that's all going to be coordinated with the other end of that road. If you recall, there was a federal safety grant I think the county was involved in, to relocate or reorient the end of that connection at Old Cherokee by the car wash there. And where Catawba Trail comes in and that kind of thing.
So I'm not a construction guy, but that's got to be a 9 to 12-month construction
Yes, sir.
project, right? Okay.
Yes, it and that's why I'm saying January.
Yeah,
We might be close on the building, but the road's
We're going to wait for the road improvement. Okay.
It's a lot of work. It is. Just want to highlight a few things at Lexington Elementary. We've talked about some work there. We have completed, if you ride by now, up on the top side where the old building sections were, we've completed a nice grass play area for the students. Before they were it was just kind of scattered all over the place, and so we have a nice play area up on the top area for them that sod will grow in this spring and be very, very nice for them. And there's a kind of an orientation of it. You can kind of see this was kind of where the main buildings used to be up on the hill, as we call it. And then just want to point out the entrance drive that we added for parent drop-off connection with the town of Lexington. We've been working with them very closely on coordinating their improvements. They're working on part of their one-way pair improvement that's going to continue adding 2 lanes going, all the way up through the intersection there at the current Lexington Middle School site. And we've been able to open this entrance now for parent stacking. So we went from stacking basically along Azalea to all of this additional stacking, double stacked all the way around. So it's a tremendous addition to this campus. It really will make a difference in the usage of this campus. And then this side you see is the bus loop, which we've also redirected and paved. The buses used to just kind of exit straight out through here. So it's really going to make an impact in the area. So we're pleased that that's open now, and the town is going to continue the work over on the intersection at Azalea. Just a shot looking back at that entrance there. Moving on to Oak Grove, we're getting very close here at this project, Classroom Addition, as you recall. on the front of the school. You can see the exterior is really finished. It looks really good. And interior, we've got a few ceiling tiles out just for inspection purposes, but you can see the hallways are pretty well done. Paint's finished, finishes are up on the walls. We've got technology waiting to go in, and casework installed. So bathroom facilities are complete, and fixtures are in. So really excited about getting that space occupied. Similarly, at White Knoll Elementary School, kindergarten classroom addition, again on the exterior, really taking shape, almost complete here on the outside of the building. And the interior, we're doing painting and finishes, and we'll have some ceiling tiles in here. You can see some of the casework going in, the flooring's down. So really making good progress here as well. And these are kindergarten classrooms, again, that are much needed at White Knoll Elementary School. So that's just a circulation hallway there leading up to these classrooms. White Knoll High School, again, great progress being made at White Knoll High School. 32 classroom addition off the front of the building. You see roofing going down. Brick has gone up around the building. The spray foam waterproofing is installed there. It's a good shot of the roof. This is the white cap sheet. This is the finished product here, and that's still a little bit left to be done. And again, this is on the front left of the building. You can see windows have been installed. So really making great progress on the outside to get it dried in. Here's some shots of the interior of the building, ductwork, and electrical work is ongoing there. We've got our main stairwell location here, that's installed, and very excited about what that brings to the campus. And then on the opposite side of the campus, the addition is actually up here with the main road, Platte Springs being over here. This is the Performing Arts Theater, and it's really a separate project almost with the amount of work that's going on and the way the site lays out. This will be a 1,000-seat Performing Arts theater. You see our stage here, our pit here, and then the existing little theater where we're repurposing that into a black box and some additional classroom space. Just a ground level shot. You can see this is actually where the stage is poured, and they're pouring the seating for the auditorium. So really making good progress over there. And that looks at kind of how it's tying back into the main building.
So maybe for next month, Dr. Talley, we can maybe talk about how they're going to be using those additional classrooms for instruction, or just maybe kind of get an update. That's the physical plan, but understand how we're going to operationalize, because that's a lot of new classrooms, and just trying to understand what the vision is.
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. And just a quick answer is they have a number of portable classrooms at White Knoll High School.
Oh, okay.
And so we're going to be moving those students into the building, those programs into the building.
Okay.
Some of the programs that are there, we're going to relocate to give them more appropriate space. They have an unbelievable printing facility there. They printed all these signs that you see around the essential services on the COVID-related signs. They printed them for pennies on the dollar compared to what we initially went out for. So they do all kinds of work like that. And they call it pack printing. There's a spot for them in the new facility. But we'll work through that with you. Be glad to show you that information. The new Pilley Middle School, pleased to say that we are open, and we have students, and our communications team put together a quick little video. So if you don't mind indulging, we're going to take about 2 minutes, and we'll get this video started.
It's kind of like being a kid in a candy store. You walk into a really beautiful space, and you're overwhelmed, but it's also, it already feels like home.
F-105. So you're going to go down that direction. It's kind of moving out of, the house you grew up in into a new beautiful space, and it's going to take a little bit of time to really make it our own, but it's just as exciting because we're the first ones here.
I'm really smiling big behind my mask. It is an honor to lead Pillion Middle School, period, but also especially in this time. It has been an incredible lift for us to move mid-year, but to be a part of the resilience of the staff, to be a part of this exciting time, and to have the honor in leading in this space, it's truly a blessing.
Well, the old school the classroom was kind of small, but this one is kind of bigger. I have more space, I can work easier.
Having the opportunity to move into a brand new school, it's amazing. You know, not many teachers really get to have that experience. And I get to say, I'm one of the first teachers in this space, and I get to help shape, you know, the atmosphere of this school.
This space is incredible, but again, it pales in comparison to the people who are here. And the memories of 758 Magnolia Street, the drive that we developed there, the hard work that went into that space, we brought those values, those core values, along with us to 325 Main Street, and we're going to continue that work.
We made memories, a bunch of fun things happened, but I mean, we're in a new school, new memories can be made.
So thanks to our communications department for putting that together, and really just a shout out to you know, Matt Warren and our maintenance folks for coordinating the effort, Rodney Craps coordinating the effort to get that move to happen. But then it really was a team effort. Our central services staff, our instructional services department, and you know, folks from HR, folks from student services, everybody was out there before the break, making sure that teachers got their equipment and materials moved over. And Ms. Braley and the staff over there just did an outstanding job. It was just seamless. I mean, I was there the first morning, you know, after the break, and it was just like not the virtual day, but the first day we had students, and it was just like a normal school day. I mean, it was really, really impressive how well prepared they were. Just did an outstanding job. So pleased to get that building open and used for that community. We're excited about that project. Of course, any of our projects you can track on our website through the building plan progress page, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I would just like to thank everyone from senior leadership team, because I think as a board, we are used to building and opening schools, and so we take it for granted. But this is a big deal for a lot of districts in our state, and we've been blessed with growth, and we've been funding that growth. But to handle that as well as all of instruction and to do it seamlessly I mean, we make mistakes. It's just the fact of any leadership role. But again, very minimal mistakes. I just want to say thank you as one of our board members.
Well, opening 2 schools in a COVID pandemic year is a pretty interesting accomplishment. So, but we have a great team to pull it together.
Thank you, Mr. Salters. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Erica Bissell, as well as she's our Reading and Language Arts Coordinator, and Jessica Bizard, our Academic Assistance, Early Childhood, and Title I Coordinator. And they are going to present to you, you know, one of the things that we've been talking about on an ongoing basis is the early childhood centers that we're working on in Gilbert and the Pillion communities. So we just want to give you a quick update on that and answer any questions you might have. Dr. Bissell?
Thank you, Dr. Little, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here with you tonight to provide an update on the Gilbert and Pillion Early Childhood Centers. And please do forgive, we're going to try to tag team this, and we'll see how seamlessly we can do that with masks and 2 microphones. So, and a clicker. So, let's see. All right. So there are many reasons for opening early childhood centers in Lexington. One, first, you are very familiar with in 2018, we passed a bond referendum that included selective demolition and repurposing of 2 sites, the previous Gilbert High School / Gilbert Elementary School campus and previous Pillion Middle School campus. The repurposing of the 2 sites will allow us to establish early childhood centers and relocate preschool programs currently housed at Gilbert Elementary School, Centerville Elementary School, and Pillion Elementary School. Second reason why early childhood centers are going to be a very important piece of our future here in Lexington 1 is because of the requirement of Act 284, Read to Succeed. for districts to assess and to respond to data related to kindergarten readiness, which essentially looks at how prepared students are for entering kindergarten. We can bolster kindergarten readiness by offering high-quality early childhood experiences. The law also requires districts to strive to have all students reading on grade level by 3rd grade, as well as to form strong family and community partnerships. These are also things that we can accomplish by opening early childhood centers in Lexington 1. Third, the benefit of quality early childhood experiences cannot be underestimated as a predictor of future academic success. Thus, early childhood must continue to be a focus in Lexington 1. And finally, by opening 2 early childhood centers in Lexington 1, we can increase our preschool offerings through the addition of preschool classrooms.
Okay, so we're going to talk for a minute about the project timeline. All right, so we're going to go back for a minute to 2019-20. Let's all reflect on how things were, before pre-pandemic. So as a reminder, we started in 2019 with the research of building design, programming, and then also interactive experiential opportunities for children. And then last school year, we also proposed to adding an additional 1.0 FTE 4K teacher at Centerville Elementary for this academic year, the 2020-2021 school year. And we were able to do that.
So this year, we are continuing to research early childhood programs, approaches, classroom design, as well as Gilbert and Pillion community needs. We've also been planning for a preschool inclusion initiative that will bridge special education and general education preschool programs. We are currently working with architects to design and develop renderings of the Gilbert Early Childhood Center on the previous Gilbert High School and Gilbert Elementary School campus. And this spring, we will engage the Gilbert community in 2 ways. We'll work with community leaders to organize a Gilbert community celebration of the campus history. And though there will be many more details to come, we do know that with this will include tours of the campus. And we will also have conversations with groups in the Gilbert community, such as current preschool teachers at Centerville and Gilbert Elementary School, community leaders, existing Gilbert school staff at the elementary schools, middle, and high school, as well as the SIC at Gilbert Elementary School in Centerville, so that we can discuss ways to leverage the campus to enhance the community alongside the Early Childhood Center. So moving into next year, we will complete renovations of the previous Gilbert High School, Gilbert Elementary School campus. We will present a staffing proposal as well as other budget considerations for the Gilbert Early Childhood Center, which is projected to open in August of 2022. And we will also finalize the building design and begin renovations of the previous Pillion Middle School campus.
Okay, so since the Gilbert Early Childhood Center is opening first, we're going to shift for the next few slides to some Gilbert-specific information. And then during a future update, we will provide the same information for the Pillion Early Childhood Center. So what you see here on this slide is the current service impact and then the future service impact of the Gilbert Early Childhood Center. So currently, in this school year, 2020-2021, we house 6 preschool classrooms across Gilbert Elementary and Centerville Elementary that now serve a total of 115 students. We have capacity across those 6 programs to serve 132 students. And the difference is the ability to be able to serve more special education students as those children are identified. For the 2021-2022 school year, we do not plan on adding in any additional FTE or classrooms, so we'll remain at the 6 preschool classrooms. And then we'll continue that into 2022-2023, which will be the Gilbert Early Childhood Center projected opening year. We'll remain at 6 preschool classrooms. But then by the 2024-2025 school year, we have a plan to grow to a total of 9 preschool classrooms, which will have a capacity to serve 170 preschool students in that community. Okay, so what you see here is a preliminary rendering of the Gilbert Early Childhood Center. This design is still very fluid as we're in the early stages and of course could change as we get further along in the process. But we have some pictures we'd like to show you on the next few slides, which include examples of the vision for the outdoor space. So you see the courtyard that's in the middle. The campus really... I'm not as good at just He's had more practice. He's had more practice. So the Gilbert Early Childhood Center campus really does lend itself to a nice outdoor courtyard space that we have some plans for. We're going to show you in just a minute. And then we're also going to walk through some visions we have for other areas like hallways. The images represent the feel that we are really going after, but as with this overall design, we do know that they could change or evolve as we continue to plan.
All right, so now I get to the fun slides. So this is the outdoor play space, or a vision of the outdoor play space, which will be in the existing courtyard on the Gilbert campus. And this natural feel will invite creativity, play, and exploration. Unlike the image shown here, we will incorporate more shade to be sure to protect students from the blazing South Carolina sun and other elements. And that was something that somebody I ran this presentation by suggested I mention, Dr. Little. But we do.
I mean, to be fair, can you imagine a kid jumping on that slide in August at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes.
What would happen?
I can't.
I
But the
was already
feel,
thinking about
I want you to
taking it.
come with me to the feel of a very organic, natural space where students are not bound by traditional play equipment, but instead have the opportunity to create and innovate and use the natural environment around them to enhance their play. The second image, and again, I'm sorry about the glare of this, see the blazing sun again, but this was actually not taken in South Carolina, but instead in Austin, Texas. But this image shows a classroom backyard, which safely extends the classroom beyond the four walls and allows for outdoor learning experiences. And in our design proposal, we have suggested a backyard for all classrooms. And that really allows students to freely go inside and out, of course, safely. You'll see there is a confined area. But it also it allows for a very different learning experience than what can happen within the four walls of a traditional classroom. And then the Gilbert campus has wonderful breezeways that are premier areas to add design elements such as color and texture to extend learning beyond the classroom. So this is an image that we are using to guide some of the architectural plans to show how the breezeways that are already part of the Gilbert campus can be enhanced and used to add some design elements and as well as learning experiences. And then interactive hallways, which is a really neat concept shown here, which will provide opportunity to allow learning to happen in every student space. And again, the Gilbert campus has wonderful hallways that are just really prime for having some interaction up and down those hallways for our preschool students to have learning experiences, whether they're in the classroom, whether they're out in the outdoor play space, or whether they're walking up and down the halls with their classmates or in small groups or coming to and from different services that they may be having provided.
See, Erica had the fun stuff. So to talk about the immediate budget impact of the Early Childhood Center design, the funds provided by the 2018 bond referendum allow for selective demolition and the repurposing of the remaining space. However, as we conceptualize the possibilities of the Early Childhood Center, there will likely be additional budget considerations proposed. The ideas shared thus far go well beyond the demolition and general repurposing and will require significant changes. However, we feel strongly that we must do this right the first time and do it based on research, and also what we feel will provide Lexington 1 preschool students with the best experience possible.
So as we conclude our update for this evening, and again, we'll come back at another time to provide the same information for the Pillion Early Childhood Center, we just wanted to remind you of our next steps in this project. And one is to engage the Gilbert community in the two ways that we outlined on a slide previous. We will also continue to work with the architects to design and develop renderings of the Gilbert Early Childhood Center. And a little further down the road, we will finalize the building design and begin renovations of the previous Pillion Middle School campus. So with that, we will end the update officially and open the floor to any questions that you may have for us.
You know, with regard to you had hit on the special education, and I can tell you from where I sit in my office, the community needs for identification, testing, evaluation for kids with pervasive developmental disorders, it's astronomical right now, and unfortunately, the timeline is just not good. You know, with like USC Developmental Clinic, we're on a 9-month to 12-month time frame, and so, you know, with us knowing the importance of that 2-year, 3-year, 4-year-old, you know, not only do I think that space design is important, but those budgetary considerations for testing and evaluation, psychologists, those kind of things. I mean, that's really what we're seeing in the community. And so obviously any help that can be provided there, I think, is a win for the community. And furthermore, with I think the term for that, is that a biophilic design when they look at?
Or there's another term I'm going to teach you, resi-mercial.
Oh, okay, okay.
Where you take the residential and commercial and combine it.
Yep. So I went to a session on that, and it was really surprising the low cost that can be accomplished of doing that, and the huge gains you get, because they were taking 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds with autism and measuring heart rates and things like that, and just by walking into those environments, I mean, just staggering statistics on how that's lowered, and obviously, you know, contributes to overall health and well-being of the child. So, no, it's definitely a need in the community from where we sit.
So Dr. Atten, thank you. And we really focused on building design, but staffing, to your point, OT, PT, psychologists, social work, all of that is definitely part of the instructional plan and the staffing proposal that we're going to make for the early childhood center. So that is definitely on our radar. And Jessica's working closely with our special ed preschool coordinator to make sure those programs become more aligned, are more inclusive, and that we have early intervention in place for all of those students. And I'm very proud of your terminology when you're talking about the feel and the environment and how much that matters. And just for example, cost savings, you mentioned that play space that I showed. You would not, well, you probably would believe because you're probably part of the decision making, but that typical playground equipment that we put in our school spaces costs a fortune. And we can really do a lot with repurposed materials. Tires are, you know, things that we can bring in that kids can climb on and crawl through, and that don't necessarily have to be metal and pre-bought, pre-fabric fashioned. We can do a lot with the environment and work with people who can talk to us about upcycling and recycling and all of those things. So I think it's a really amazing concept, and it could be a huge cost savings. But we are looking at grants and community partnerships to be the other piece of the funding, as well as the budget implications and budget requests will bring forth to general fund budget and capital fund budget.
To Dr. Bissell's point, you know, you hear people say the child would rather play with the box that the toy came in than the actual toy itself, and that's really a big driver of the focus behind the professional learning we've been doing with our preschool teachers around play and around just everyday items and how they can create with those and innovate versus, you know, actually fixed items of what came in the box, right? So that's really a big push behind our design and our programming.
So I would have one request for consideration. We've talked about the space and the capital. Again, that's peanuts compared to the operational costs and the staffing FTEs that this eventually will mature into, which again, I think this board wants to support. But obviously, this is another step for this board of educating our community and additional infrastructure and cost. So I would ask that we consider some level of a compact with these parents, because obviously parents and that, you know, 0 through 5 affects their kids more than anyone else in the world. That starts to evaporate and then dissolves, you know, when they turn 18. But I think if we can get parents who we agree mutually that their kid would benefit from this program to also agree through a compact or some type of structure that they will read with their children every night for 30 minutes, that they will A, B, and C, healthy habits that we know will improve that kid's educational trajectory, and then actually hold them accountable, make them self-report their reading, similar to their students get grades. The parents self-report, yeah, I read 30 minutes with my kid tonight. I think that will multiply our investment as a board in these children who are at risk. So just something for consideration, a compact with those parents.
appreciate that suggestion. Thank you.
Well, and that, Dr. Powers, that kind of, one of the questions I wrote to myself during your presentation was, and I'm sure that y'all are doing this because y'all are always 100 steps ahead of where my thinking is, but working with the resources that we have at the Parenting Center that are already doing those sorts of mentoring to parents, because I think that's going to be a big part, like Dr. Powers said, of assisting parents in making this successful for their children.
So as we talked about our next steps with involving the Gilbert community, it's going to be reaching out and finding community partners, but also talking about what the needs of the community are so that we can bring what we're doing at the Parenting Center out into the Gilbert community, out into the Pillion community, so that if transportation's an issue or the services that aren't what they need, we will know that, and then we can provide better services, more services, differentiated services, whatever it is that the community needs. So that's why we really need to do the outreach piece this spring to find out what it is that will bring value to to a parenting or family engagement center alongside the early childhood center. And to Dr. Powers' point was, my child is growing, I can be growing as a parent, as a guardian, as a family member. And then also to that point is reaching out to our daycare centers and our other early learning partners to make sure that we all are going after the same thing and that we're learning and growing together, rather than seeing this as a competition for funding, because I mean they have a charge for their programs, but instead having a collaboration. And we actually started doing a lot of that a little quicker than we had anticipated with the pandemic, but it's been a good thing. And to Mr. Stacy's point, a lot of things we're doing now, we probably should have been doing all along, and we will continue to do post COVID-19.
There may be other people in this room that are as excited as I am about this, but there's no one in this room more excited than I am about this. Several years ago, we visited the Early Childhood Development Center in District 4 and talked with Dr. Linda Lavender when she was there, and that was kind of her baby. And that is an amazing facility, and what we saw there, I mean, it looks to me that we're going to far surpass that, and this is exciting, and I just hope that the community really appreciates what we're offering here. This is big, big, and thank you, and we're really looking forward to updates.
I just have a couple of comments. Y'all mentioned collaboration. That was a great idea. I know y'all mentioned that during the last meeting, and I mean, I would have never thought of that, but that's great that y'all work with the surrounding daycares. Will this be a tuition-based program? Has any thought been put? It will not be. Okay.
So the Gilbert Early Childhood Center will all be needs-based programs.
Needs-based. Okay. And you mentioned transportation. Is that going to be provided?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
For the students.
For the students, yes.
And now, but if we were to see that there was a need for the community to have some sort of transportation, that definitely could be something we could explore. But students will have transportation from, and it'll be to the center. So some districts around, they will send them to their home school and then transport that over to the Early Childhood Center. It'll be direct transport. The Early Childhood Center will be their home school.
Okay. Thank y'all.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank
We
you
appreciate
both very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Tremendous.
Is that everything?
That is all that I have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to 11.0, new business. I just want to remind the board that there are policies that are on the agenda for first reading tonight, and they will be voted on in February during our second reading. And the first is 11.1, which is the 2021-2022 Board of Trustees meeting calendar. And I believe Ms. Hill is going to lead that conversation.
Yes, so Madam Chair, members of the board, as you remember, this is just the first reading of a proposed schedule for Board of Trustees meetings in the next year, the 2021-2022 year. As you remember, the Lexington County School District 1 Board of Trustees meets on the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. The following are the third Tuesdays. I've given you that information in your exhibit. I circled those in green for the calendars that you're looking at. For the most part, it is the third Tuesday formula. However, there is one conflict, and then we're asking for one exception. So the conflict is that the third Tuesday in December would actually fall during winter break. So we recommend moving it to the second Tuesday in December, and you see we've given you that. The exception is we would ask you to approve moving the June meeting to the fourth Tuesday. As you remember, sometimes we ask you to bump that late because it is part of the budget process, may mean that we need another week, that the legislature has made a change at the last minute or something that impacts that budget process. So we often need that other week, and so we've decided to go ahead and ask for that up front this year. In addition, we have some proposed second meetings for a couple of months. They're either circled in red or blue on the attached calendars that you have. For the benefit of any new board members, we use the second meetings for things like a year-end review of the district's accomplishments and progress against either the strategic plan and or our own goals and objectives, the superintendent's evaluation, budget presentations, that's a series of several meetings, and other things like that, rather large items. The red circles would indicate a full board meeting to do those types of things. The blue circles indicate meetings that we traditionally have needed to call as special board members meetings because we need some employment approvals toward the end of the year as we're approaching a new school year and we start to reach the deadlines that other districts have for releasing employees. It becomes important that we grab those when we can, and so we can't wait for a full meeting the third Tuesday of the month, but instead might need you to do that the first week of a month so that we can grab those people before they're gone. It's a really competitive process now, as Mr. Stacy's already pointed out, and so we need to have those on the calendar as a just in case. That doesn't mean we wouldn't still need to call an occasional special board meeting, but we're trying to do some planning so that we could set your year up and you could go ahead and put those on your calendar. Remember, this is just first reading, so we ask you to take a look at these dates, look at your calendars, see what questions you have, reach out to me if you have any specific questions about it, and we're giving these to you for your reaction and review.
So this is Jada. I have a question. Why is the April 19th meeting moving to April 26th?
So that is the exception. That would be when we give the first reading of the budget. And so we were asking for extra time for that.
Last year, we had first reading at the end of May. And we're saying next year we're going to be reviewing the budget almost a month earlier.
We're very hopeful to do that. Mr. Salters can elaborate, but we have.
If you go back historically, the first reading has been in in April, that last meeting, and we've usually moved it to the last week in April. And last year, there were so many things going on with COVID, and there were so many unknowns. We didn't know what the budget looked like, so that's why it was pushed to May. But if you go back historically, typically that first reading is in April, and that's what we're trying to get back to give you guys as much time as possible to work through things. It's kind of a balance between the legislature and getting information from them and giving you guys as much time to work on a budget as possible.
Okay.
So just to clarify, I didn't speak correctly to the first exception. It's actually April we're asking for the exception and not in June. We talked about June, but we're not prepared to ask you for that yet.
So then what is that June?
So the regular June meeting right now falls on June the 21st. We have from time to time had to go to that last one on the 28th, but we're not asking for it at this point. If we can get it done by the 21st, it's a benefit to finance, as Mr. Salters can elaborate, because they have to get that in place and all the accounts set up before we would open the new school year on July 1st.
Okay, I just know last year when we had this conversation, we had a whole lot of extra meetings. And this year, I have felt that we've kind of done the same thing. I think it's easier to schedule meetings like we did last week for a board workshop, or a year or so ago. You know, we called one at 7:30 in the morning and we had a quorum just to change the time of a future meeting. And I just don't think we need all of these. The September 7th, that's the year-end review. The October 5th is the superintendent's evaluation. So the April 5th, because we had a meeting in April this year. We only had one. Let's see here. And we had 3 meetings in April and May of last year, and only one was necessary. But under these proposed dates brought to us, we're going to have 3 meetings in 4 weeks between April and May. And understand, you know, one of those is a budget exception on April the 26th. But if that's the case, I just don't think we need the April 5th meeting. September 7th, I mean, that could be combined with the other September meeting, September 21st.
And Mary Beth, correct me, but the board chair, obviously, if there's no agenda items, can cancel a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the considerations was that we have working board members, so they have, you all have jobs outside of this too, so we were trying to get these on your calendar to make it a little easier on you.
The only problem here is when we schedule them, we don't cancel them, and we had this conversation last year. So, I mean, if you look back at a couple of agendas, for instance, let's see here, on September 17th, we called a meeting, we got an update on the instructional model, we heard a couple of policies, and then we adjourned. That was September. On, let's see here, May the 5th, we had some employment recommendations, discussed land. We got a couple of reports, and then we met again a couple weeks later with an even larger agenda. So I think we spend more time and more money preparing for these additional meetings than we do actually conducting business during the meeting. So when you look at supper, you have an hour allotted for executive session, which most time only lasts about 15 minutes. I just feel like we're wasting a bunch of time. Then we've got staff who has to show up, printing agendas, preparing the auditorium and overflow room, preparing for live streaming. We got costs associated with food and an SRO. And we do all of this for the board to take care of a couple of items that could have been moved to our 3rd Tuesday of the month meeting. So because it's on the calendar, we just don't cancel it, whereas it's easier to add a date if we need it. So
Well,
that's just...
Just to correct you, Ms. Garris, we did cancel one this year, and we did eliminate some months where we would traditionally have had a second one. So we eliminated a second meeting in August. We eliminated some others because of the considerations that you're saying in general. The additional meetings in April, May, and June are highly likely to be used for employment recommendations for the new year.
Right, so if we're just meeting for employment recommendations, I feel like that's something that can be done through Zoom, not to call a whole board meeting, get everybody in here, set everybody up. I mean, that's another recommendation I had.
I would recommend that the board talk this over, and you express your opinions to each other, and then we'll come back for second reading. And if you have some corrections that you'd like to make, we can handle those then.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hill. All right. And 11.2 is the first reading of the 2021-2022 academic calendar, and Mr. Clark Cooper is here with that.
All right, well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. In your packet for your review, you will find our recommendation for the 21-22 academic school calendar. This is the calendar that does detail the 180 school days for students and the 10 teacher work days for the 190-day contract teachers. This calendar is a little bit longer in the making in terms of bringing it to you. We began working on this calendar during the 1920 school year, and had made a good deal of progress and gotten a lot of feedback. And then, of course, in March, things did change. And rather than complicate the issue with, salvaging the 1920 school year and how we adjusted days that year, and then, of course, our very new schedule that we had this year, we wanted to give some time before we brought to you the 21-22 draft academic calendar. The calendar committee, like I said, did meet both last year and this year. We have gotten a large degree of feedback, looked at survey results that were conducted in the winter of 19 in the development of this calendar. We will be also showing it, presenting it to the Parent Advisory Council next month, February the 1st. Now, just to point out a few key things before we start, I will tell you we're very excited about this calendar. We do like it a lot. It is a reasonably balanced calendar. It is a 92-88 semester 1, semester 2 calendar. It does have one key element that I'd like to point out to you: virtual weather makeup days. And you've heard a couple of folks mention in their presentations how these times have brought about innovation and things that we might ought to have been doing, but now we're doing and we want to keep doing. But we do have virtual weather makeup days built into this calendar. We're required by the state to hold 3 placeholder days. So you do see in that orange highlighted cell the 3 days that we have had to overtly state as electronic weather makeup days. Our intent is to use them on the day of inclement weather when we're unable to have school. So if there was a hurricane that impacted the Myrtle Beach area and we were forced to shut down on, say, September the 3rd, September the 3rd would be the weather makeup day. School would go on virtually that day. And that would allow us to use the 3 days that you see that we've designated as holidays for the students and the staff. So that's a little bit new with this calendar. Additionally, we have been able to preserve the traditional holiday times in the calendar that you'll see with Thanksgiving having 3 days and Christmas and Easter, and we'll walk through all of those. We've also got intermittent breaks built in every month. We are very excited about that for students and staff. Having that small break during each month is going to be, I think, beneficial both academically and from a human resources standpoint. And we also have built in a few natural barriers, a little bit beefier break during the time of the year where people are traditionally most sick in February and March. Nurse Amy Wood, our director of nursing, was a member of this committee. She did do a lot of conversations with area physicians, talked about that need to create an amount of time that can break that cold and flu cycle, that kind of that incubation period. So we think we've got some good time built in there for that hopefully allows our students and staff to stay healthy. So what I'd like to do is kind of just walk through the calendar with y'all. You'll look and see that in August, teachers do report back on August the 9th. There are 6 pre-service days on August 9th through the 16th. Kids come back to school on August the 17th. So again, we're bound by starting after that 3rd Monday in August. And so we'll start there on that Tuesday. Does give a little bit of a shorter week for our youngest learners with 11 instructional days during that month. We move into September. We have the traditional holiday there at Labor Day with 21 school days during that month. That carries us into October, where we will, you do see the first 9 weeks wrap up with 46 instructional days. That ends on October the 20th. We have a teacher work day for parent-teacher conferences on the 21st, and then a holiday for students and staff on October the 22nd, kind of creating a little bit of that fall break there for our students and their families. We then continue through the month of October with a total of 19 instructional days that month. Move into November, and we do have the traditional 3-day Thanksgiving break. According to survey feedback, that Wednesday before Thanksgiving is very important to our families to have that off if at all possible, and so we're glad we were able to build in a calendar that supports that with a total of 19 instructional days that month as well. 3 full weeks between Thanksgiving break and Christmas break, with 13 instructional days during the month of December, and a 2 full week Christmas winter break. Always has a better feel to it for the kids and for families and for staff when we have those adjacent weekends on each end of that break. I know Christmas break probably felt a little shorter to some this year with the massaging of the calendar. It had to be done to accommodate COVID. After those 2 full weeks at Christmas break, students and staff return on January the 3rd and wrap up the second 9 weeks with 9 instructional days, and the second quarter and the first semester end on January the 13th. 46 days for that second quarter, 92 days for the first semester. On January the 14th, that is a teacher work day for teachers to prepare our high school. Most of our high school teachers will be receiving new kids for second semesters schedules, and so that day is important to them to have that work day in there as well. The MLK holiday is on January the 17th, and then we will start second semester Tuesday, January 18th, just like we're kind of doing right now today. And there are 10 more instructional days that month. We move into February, and during that month, you'll see the first of our kind of that cold and flu break, where we typically have usually had a weather makeup day or a holiday that month. We were able to build in 2 of those on bookending either side of the third weekend there in February. The 21st is President's Day, so we did intentionally put it there for the kind of the regular break. We've got a few weeks into second semester. We've gotten it started good, create that natural break there. And it's at a time where a lot of our parents do have a day off from work. We move into, and there are 18 instructional days that month. We move into March, and again, we see a similar thing. On March the 17th, we have our second parent-teacher conference day, which would be a teacher work day on that particular day, followed by the 18th being a student and staff holiday. So a 4-day weekend for the kids, again, creating that barrier where we have been known to have folks with a high degree of illness during that particular time. And the third quarter ends that next week on the 24th of March. 44-day third 9 weeks for our students. We finish the month, there's 21 total instructional days. We move forward 3 more weeks, and we get to our spring break, one full week at spring break. We were able to preserve that. Easter is on April the 17th, so that week does accommodate Good Friday. Also, feedback driven, very important for a lot of members of this community to have that Good Friday day off, so this calendar does accommodate that with 16 instructional days. We move into May and have a good little haul until we get to Memorial Day on May the 30th. Of course, during that time, a lot of testing's going on, so not real conducive to have a break at any time during that period. But we do have Memorial Day off. Kids return from Memorial Day, and we do have our final exams. The students' last day would be Thursday, June the 2nd, another 44-day quarter, bringing it to 88 days that second semester, and teachers do finish up on June the 3rd with their 10th workday. So we were glad that we were able to. We couldn't end before Memorial Day, which that I think is a popular idea and what a lot of folks would like to see, but we're able to finish the year for both students and staff during the week Memorial Day's on. So I think it's it's a good organized calendar that does support health and safety, first and foremost, instruction, and is supportive of our students, our staff, and the families in this community. Be glad to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, this looks really great. I can tell y'all did a lot of work, but I do have a few questions. I was really glad to hear that if, say, September 2nd is a bad weather day, that they could just move to their other models of learning, so online learning. But then at the bottom, it said virtual learning, inclement weather days will be e-learning days on those 3 dates. I'm assuming that's if for some reason they need more days?
So
or
that's what we have to provide the state. We've got to declare 3 of them. We've got to just put them in as placeholders, but we'll be able to use the actual day of inclement weather.
Okay.
So that's just kind of a bookkeeping mechanism for the state. Now,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, now, if it was, say, a widespread, power grids are down
Right.
type thing, then obviously we would have to adjust to one of these days.
Right.
So that's the good reason for them to be there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then the next thing, I know this 2020, 2021 school year has been a little different, but going forward, is our district not doing anything for collaborative planning for our teachers?
So collaborative planning and like virtual days that we have, that's developing those dates is not a charge of the calendar committee. That would be of district leadership and our instruction department. So the calendar committee does not design or make the decision of implementing collaborative planning days. That would be through our instruction department and leadership with the principals. Now, should that happen, then the calendar committee or a subset of them could be charged with, all right, find us the place to put 5, 6, 7 of those days if that was the desire.
So that would be something then like Dr. Little and them would decide if we're going to use
Yes, ma'am.
those days for collaborative planning. Okay. Oh, another question. And I could just be wrong. I'm just going off of my memory here. The last day of school, is it always a full day?
Again, that's a great question. It typically is not. Typically there are half days, and again, those have typically been built in, but that's a separate process, and again, done through our feedback from principals, our instructional department, and Dr. Little. So those still could be there.
Right, so when is that done? So we have this first reading, and then, so will that be done before we approve the calendar?
So this would, I don't think so. This would go back to y'all again in February for second reading, and then I think immediately thereafter, as the picture becomes more clear about, the final exams being set, then those half days could be, decided upon and then put in. I will say what has been most typical during, my almost 20 years in the district is that first exam period, there's typically been a half day there, and there's typically been 2 at the final exams at the end of the year.
Right.
But that would be decided, I think, pretty soon after we had a recommendation from the board on the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am?
What?
State law allows for 3 of those days, yes, ma'am.
For 3, okay.
You have to love elementary school teachers because they always find the silver lining in any dark cloud. And one of the feedback, or some of the feedback I got was when we did that sort of A/B model for that first week back, and again, this is more in line to that collaborative planning, not with the actual bare bones of the calendar template. But really, there was a ton of feedback about just their ability, and especially in the elementary level, to get to know their student so well with that sort of A/B model that first week, and how they would love to see that replicated in the future if at all possible. But again, that's more with regard to the implementation of this calendar, not the actual bare bones. So that was some of the feedback I had heard.
Dr. Guyton, I had the same feedback, that first week, the teachers really liked the opportunity to bring half of their students in and the team building and the class norms and the protocols and the processes. It was just so much easier and better to do it with, 50%
Right,
group there.
right.
So I got the same feedback. Any other comments or questions from Mr. Cooper? It's really nice when the calendar helps us out and Christmas Day and New Year's Day fall on Saturdays, because it makes the calendar so nice. And I mean, that this year, and I'm not a teacher, but having just 2 days before Christmas was brutal. And I know it was for our staff. So that seeing that week before Christmas Day looks very, very nice. So thank you very much for the work y'all did.
We're excited about it, and we'll bring it back to you for second reading in February.
Thank you. All right, board, we are at the end of our agenda. I was just going to remind you that we have set a board workshop for Tuesday, February 2nd at 6 p.m. here in the auditorium. And so we'll have more details about that coming out, and we'll notice it and everything for the public. That'll be on February 2nd. Is there anything else that anyone wants to share? Or
Are we going to put up a groundhog tree that night?
a groundhog tree?
Yeah, it is Groundhog Day.
I just want you to tell the same bad joke over and over and over
Over and
again.
over.
Okay.
You know, one
I
thing.
do that.
One thing I did want to say on the heels of Dr. Little's discussion about vaccination. So I've received now my second vaccine from one of the trials, and the same thing that feedback we get from teachers about the fear that they feel and everything, that was all the same stuff that I felt back in March when this came out, and we just didn't know what to expect. And so I can tell you, after having the second vaccine, I can't tell you the amount of relief that you have associated with that. The fear that just is so quickly dismissed once you know that you have a level of protection there. And so I would certainly urge all the teachers to please, teachers, staff, everyone, to please take a look at the information presented this coming Friday, because having now being on this side of that, I can tell you that it is just a different feeling. I'm sure Dr. Powers can speak to the same, that it really does provide a incredible sense of relief.
Thank you, Dr. Guyton, for that.
And no side effects in Dr. Guyton and I, so we were healthy and whole.
I cannot wait for all of us to be on that side of this. Well, I hope that 2021 is off to a great start for everyone. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Is there a second? Thank you. We're adjourned. Have a good evening.